Welcome to Folio, an actual play podcast about solo and epistolary TTRPGs. I'm your host, Satah, and I'm showcasing multiple possible experiences of self-paced games by inviting guests to play them alongside me so I can compile our stories together. You can support the show financially at patreon.com/foliopod or with a one-off donation at ko-fi.com/foliopod. This is episode 3 of our games of Farsickness Landing, a one-page map-making game about rediscovering an ancient derelict ship by Lonely Cryptid Media. The other explorers of crash sites and history joining me today are Dora Rogers, whose work you can find at dcity.itch.io and galpalgames.itch.io, and Marc Majcher, whose work you can find at majcher.com and majcher.itch.io. This is the 50th episode of Folio. The 1-year anniversary of the first episode is in a week. Somewhere inside of me, I'm sure I'm very excited about this. It's pretty cool. It's a big accomplishment, but it is admittedly hard to access it through my current slightly underwater feeling about the show. It's hard, and I have not been in a place where my relationship to it is super fulfilling, but I would like it to be, and so I'm gonna keep making it. I'm gonna explore ways to make it in a way that is more sustainable on a personal level. There are probably going to be fewer episodes next year, but I'll feel better about them, and that'll be great. I will probably bring up with my therapist that I was this unable to be excited about hitting a pretty big milestone. Intellectually, I recognize it. We'll talk about it. It'll be fine. I'll figure it out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. If you have, thank you to my guests. Thank you to everyone who has designed any game that we've had on the show. I am grateful. I have no idea, generally, day to day, if I'm just sort of putting these out into the void where no one is experiencing them. But that is the nature of making stuff. But if you want to celebrate with me, feel free. Give me a shout on social media or whatever. I don't know. Let's do the next few. Let's do the next few rooms. Is this good? Is that good? Was that good? Well, there's some really good stuff in this episode. It's a really good episode. I'm very excited about this episode. So let's get to it. Let's have me stop talking in the present moment, and I can talk a little bit in the past, and Dee and Marc can also talk. Doesn't that sound better? I think that sounds better.
Let's see the next thing that happens.
Room 6.
And the next section I drew here was like super messed up. I think this is more debris from the ship that was kind of ejected here, or maybe another part that was kind of broken off and kind of, integrated, kind of amalgamated with the natural surroundings here.
Ooh, 6 and 3 5s. Let's go.
3, 2, 6, 1.
5. A cramped room.
The type is labyrinthian.
Great, and that gets me technical.
Powerful.
The modifier is scientific.
Knowing.
With a weapon.
The item is a relic.
Seed.
But peaceful.
Peaceful.
And the vibe is unsettling.
Oh, very interesting.
Almost the same as the entrance, just peaceful instead of melancholy.
An unsettling labyrinth. Say it ain't so. Okay. You know, one of the things that the game says when you're doing your setup, when you're drawing your ship to explore, is that some pieces don't connect. Or it's okay if some pieces don't connect. Like, it doesn't have to be just one piece's ship. It could break off. Like, pieces could break off, or maybe it could be multiple ships even. What I'm trying to decide is if the labyrinth is another piece, or if it's instead the whole rest of sort of the, like, brim outside of the dome. One thing I will say, I guess, is technically because I skipped the like drawing and then numbering the room, I am approaching it slightly differently than the game asks, because it says like draw your ship, number the rooms, and then go and discover them. And so you're sort of like, in the way you number rooms, locking yourself in a little bit more to like where you're going to go next, like the basic shape of it, what it looks like, what it's attached to, which I actually think is great. I always think that like more information is good, which I'm bringing up here because like if I'd already labeled something as my 6th room and it was small, I would be forced positive to reconcile labyrinthian with it in some way. But because I'm a little bit more open field because I didn't assign something, I have a lot more possibilities. And so I think what I am going to do is just make the last piece of what I have drawn so far the 6th room. So I've got the 1st room, it's a big dome in the middle. Got the 2nd room, it's like if you're standing in the middle of the dome right ahead. And the 3rd and 5th rooms are on the right and left of the 2nd room. The 4th room was the engine room underneath. And the 6th room is the entire rest of the outer rim. And it's accessed through a door that's across from the 2nd room. We open it expecting another small room like that closet where we found that one robot who was looking at us. And instead, there's a hall. A very confusing hall. What's scientific here? Could be like an illusion, holograms. Looking at the list of questions, I am drawn to what is dangerous here and how will you overcome it? And I think this is a trap of some kind. We walk in and yeah, there are just like, there's holograms, there's strange patterns on the wall that like make it unclear with the angle that it's at. Oh, you know what part of it is? I think it's like there are patterns put on the wall that are specifically confusing to organic eyes or human eyes, but not to the robots. And so this was some sort of like security or privacy measure to make it difficult for the humans to work their way through here. So it's a maze, and then I think there are traps, and I think that they aren't supposed to be dangerous. Like, they weren't designed to be dangerous. They were just designed to like, hey, you stepped in the wrong place. A wall comes down in front of you to be like, you don't know where you're going. I can tell you don't know where you're going because you stepped wrong, so don't go any further. But this ship has been sitting here for a really long time and some stuff has shifted and gone wrong. And so rather than just being relatively harmless impediments, a lot of the traps will now hurt you very badly by accident. And I think that we can sort of figure that out by like stuff that looks a little bit more complete and put together and like it's not broken is harmless, but there are ones that clearly like a hinge has fallen off or something has rusted or there's like an interior part exposed that will shock you that shouldn't be. It's supposed to have a protective shield over it. And I think we're genuinely going to overcome it just very carefully. And through an advancement in technology of some kind. Like, the humans that were on this ship didn't have access to something that we do, which might just be measurement tools. Like, we have tools that we can point at the floor and be like, okay, it's beeping differently here, which means that like the sensor is picking up that this is a weighted plate. Don't step on it. You know, just that kind of thing. Like we can find through the use of tech the little nuts and bolts that you can't see with your eyes. And so we're able to just kind of pick our way through this maze very carefully. And it is unsettling. It feels bad. I think that a couple people start to get headaches from looking at these weird patterns. But we managed to make our way through and we find the relic that I rolled, which I think, so this was something that was private to the robots. I at first had been thinking maybe this hall leads to like the bridge. It could be that. It could also just be like the place, like the robot bunks. Oh, I'm on my shit. It's a robot mausoleum. Whenever possible, I will always have reusing parts be a thing that happens as part of a death ritual. And so I think, and it makes sense for robots, right? If something happens to one of them, why wouldn't you like reclaim parts of those chassis to help the others? But this is either something that they do keep from robots who, whatever their equivalent of dying is, or it's parts that are broken beyond repair. I think it's the parts to honor them. The starting point that established these robots says, you know, limbs of metal and blood of oil, eyes hollow and knowing. And I do think like all of the statues we've seen have had their eyes open. The one robot we found in like the cramped space, the second room, was looking down at its hands, maybe with eyes closed, but definitely looked up at us with open eyes. And I think the thing that is odd here, I don't think it's not that their eyes are closed. That's too human. It's just that they don't have them. The like sensors that act as their eyes have been taken out. I think those are reused in various forms. Like they're used for a lot of different things. I think it would be to lead to some dark stuff that I'm not interested in to say that the eyes are used to develop the like chips that we have, but possibly. If that ends up being the case, it's going to be something done cooperatively. Just because that's what I'm interested in exploring here. I like, if it ends up being most interesting to have it be like a weird, like a tragic, we butchered each other for our own survival thing, I'll go there. But I like the idea that I could make something that is like cooperative and collaborative here. That just really appeals to me without sort of like dipping into the like grimdark, ooh, humans learned that these robots' eyes could help their psychic abilities, so they fucked up all the robots. I don't think that's the direction I want to go in this one. But that only matters because, yeah, there are these robot heads here. It's just the heads. There's no other parts of their bodies. And I think when we look closely, they're hollow. Like any wiring or anything inside has been removed. I hesitated there because I was like, well, keeping the head is very human-centric. Why would a robot necessarily care about the head? The brain might not even be in there. But these are humanoid robots. They were evidently designed by something humanoid, probably, even if it wasn't us or our ancestors, it seems. So it would make sense that they sort of like, yeah, they put the brain where the brain would be in a human or whatever. They put something that makes the head part of the chassis worth keeping as a memorial. And none of them have eyes. None of them have anything else. It's just the empty metal of their heads lined up carefully on shelves. I think like I was trying to think how many are there, and it's not quite to this level. I thought of the catacombs in France that are just lined with like bones and skulls. It's kind of like that, but it's not. It's like, what if that had just gotten started? All of the shelves and everything are built. All of the nooks are built for the robot heads to go into, but only like a couple hundred of them are full. And that's a lot, but there are like thousands of places where they could go. And I think that says something about like what death is to these robots. Like the fact that there's so many evidently that still are alive in some fashion, assuming that's true because they're doing weird statue shit, whatever. Like death probably means something different and specific to them, which makes sense, because why wouldn't it? Even if as, mortal meat beings, that is hard for us to comprehend. And so I guess keeping humans out was just kind of like probably multiple things. Probably there's a little bit of a cultural, we just think that you shouldn't be able to come in here. But I bet it was also a little bit of a you will find this deeply unsettling because you have a very different relationship to this concept than we do. And so you shouldn't come. We're going to make it difficult for you to come back here. Which I think is both kind and condescending. It's like, we don't want you to get hurt. And also, we don't totally know what you'll do if you're freaked out by it. You might decide that we're not allowed to do it anymore, or that, like, we have to deal with death in a way that is more familiar and comforting to you. And we don't even want that possibility to be on the table, so you don't get to see it. Yeah. Luckily, we aren't going to do anything. We're just going to look at it. We're going to go, ooh, we'll come back here later. Yeah. Cool. Robot catacombs. Fuck yeah.
Why is this technical? I mean, maybe this is the full suite of terraforming equipment that was kind of either jettisoned or blown off, or I mean, this part is really messed up, so that makes sense. Oh, if it's knowing seed, it's peaceful. Maybe it has, yeah. Although the kind of ship part, the technical part, is not in great shape. Maybe because there's kind of like a terraforming bomb kind of thing. It has created a little Genesis cave area here, and that's why it's so peaceful. And I wonder if this part is kind of open to the outside up top as well. Like maybe this is like a, what do you call it? Not a caldera, a cenote. I don't know. Where a little underground grotto, like a deep well, but not like a well. Like a large cave that it has hanging moss, and there's a little, not a waterfall, but definitely water coming from above. And it's kind of like created this natural cavern with, there's life, there's animals and greenery and the little pool at the bottom. And, maybe this went unnoticed because it is so deep. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a little science fiction Instagrammable spot, but maybe people hadn't discovered it yet, and that's not, or maybe they had and just didn't realize, they could have pressed deeper into the cavern and found a ship. Maybe there was like cool, sweet little pool to splash around in and hang out in, be a caver climber, and now we gotta go home. Yeah, interesting. I like that. That's fun. It's a little bit different. What do my senses tell me about this? My senses tell me it's alive. It's peaceful. It smells different than the rest of the ship, which is kind of stale, I guess. And this is, there's fresh air, there's fresh water. There are birds nesting down here. It sounds a lot more alive than the rest of the ship. And I feel, it is peaceful. It's nice. I think it's nice to linger here a little bit. Maybe the team, I'm definitely not here by myself. The team, maybe this is a nice little recreation area when folks go on break, instead of like going back to whatever base camp is set up by the excavation site. Maybe people chill out here for a shift and just take in what it used to be. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What is dangerous here? Wow, what is dangerous here is that, again, the ship is big, so this is probably not close to where the mine entrance is. And I think what's dangerous here is that we probably don't want anyone to just come stumbling in here. This is an important historical site that needs to be excavated and inspected and explored thoroughly. And I think the danger is that with this part being open and there being activity, other people might come across it. And so I think we need to overcome that by, setting up a perimeter, right? People are going to discover it eventually. People probably have already been here. And I think trying to hide it isn't going to work. So I think just setting up a presence saying, hey, this is dangerous now for whatever reason. We have a team down here. Do not cross this line, and not say exactly why just yet until we're ready to make a big announcement.
Weapon, but peaceful and cramped. I'm looking at my map, and I think what happens next is that she starts to explore the port side of deck 1. So she's still on the ground level. She hasn't gone up the stairs, but she goes down the opposite hallway. And cramped weapon, peaceful, powerful. I think powerful is going to sway this for me. The first door that she passes as she enters is what I've labeled number 3 on my map. And it's what I had said before was the infirmary. And the reason I like that is because it's a powerful room, and that's also a peaceful room, right? Like, things happened here. Something happened here. This was a room where something very important happened. But it is also peaceful. I think that what she feels here is peace. And this is very much a vibe. I think she doesn't know what this room is. You know, she's not a doctor. And medicine probably looks very different. A lot of medical knowledge got kept, right? If she knew more about it, she might be able to recognize some of the instruments here as sort of a version of modern medical instruments. But she doesn't. She doesn't really know what happened here. There's like 1 or 2 beds, but it doesn't seem homey enough to be somebody's place. She doesn't know. So, but she still feels, she just gets a good vibe from it, basically. I'm looking through my questions. I think that there's something broken, right? She's looking around and she has a good vibe. And then she sees that something was broken. It could have happened in the crash. But what it looks like happened, and what actually did happen, is that a console was smashed with a heavy object. Because there was more fighting here, not with sort of the fanciful weapons, right? So this is not one of the mysterious energy weapons. This is like somebody improvised a weapon. They picked up a heavy like the equivalent of like a something that was meant for sort of like bracing things or something like that. You know, this sort of like steel beam. Like a small steel beam, and they were just swinging it around, and they smashed something here. And she doesn't know what happened, but as she sees this broken console and this heavy piece of steel lying beneath it, she's kind of like, I think, like she just has a sense of like, this is like a good place, but something bad happened here. Yeah, I think that's enough for the infirmary. She moves on.
Let's go to room 7.
Okie dokie.
So I decided that room 6 there took up essentially the rest of this specific ship. And so depending on what I roll next, I'm either going to discover another ship or find that this one goes sort of deeper into the ground. Boop, 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 boop.
I'm just going to do my rolling and see what we can come up with here.
The type is destroyed.
Labyrinthian.
Okay. I think I know what I'll do with this.
The modifier is knowing.
Scientific.
Alive. Ooh.
The item is a relic.
Seed.
A trinket.
And the vibe is melancholy. Ooh.
And melancholy.
Peaceful again. Alive and peaceful. I can think of 2 ways to take the alive. One is the flora, right? That like plants have spread through this area. The other is that there are more holograms, and I think I'll go for more holograms. And I know what I'm going to do for Labyrinthian, which is that this is the crew quarters. On my map, I've just labeled the whole thing 7. There's a whole bunch of small rooms that are close together, and these were the quarters that individuals had, right? And they were almost like monastic cells, right? There was not a lot here. There was a place to sleep. There was a place to sit, right? Like almost like a small hotel room. There was probably like a screen, some sort of personal electronics for entertainment. And there were holograms that you could play in your room. You know, you could either talk to a character, or sort of an entertainment version of the system from the storage room, or you could like watch dramas, right? Like you could watch essentially TV but played out holographically in front of you. I think the idea of her talking to a fictional character from the past is like a little too pat. So I think she sees a drama, right? I think she doesn't even bother to. No, that's not right. I was going to say she doesn't bother to translate it, but she absolutely does, because she's wrapped, right? Like it is a scene where, it's just a scene and it's playing on a loop. It's when she enters the room, it starts playing on a loop, and something's clearly wrong with the system, so it loops back every 20 seconds or so. And it's a scene from this ancient drama. She has to sort of like takes a few minutes to sort of set up a system so that she can understand it, and she gets a translation, and it's like I was a classical civilization minor in school, and there's this funny thing about old literature and like old drama in particular where it is like every once in a while you're like, this is so human, like this is just like something I would watch today, and sometimes you're like, this is so fucking weird. I don't get this at all, right? And it's sort of this mix of that, right, where she's kind of like, because I think it takes place back on Earth, right? This is a drama that takes place on Earth, and she's just kind of like, it's this huge urban setting. You don't really see that, but she's just kind of like, what are these? I don't get where these characters are or what they are talking about, even with the translation. What is going on? But it's a scene with two actresses. One of them's trans, like my character is, and like I am, and she's arrested by it, right? Like she's watching somebody like her from a million years ago, and the scene is very simple, but I think it's tantalizing in its simplicity, because it's like, it's just a scene where they're talking about she doesn't really get what they're talking about. They're talking about something that happened and they're worried about it, but she has no fucking clue, right? Like she doesn't get it. She doesn't get what that history is, but she's just like watching their micro expressions, right? She's like, are they in love? Are they friends? Are they sisters? What is this, right? And it's so vivid. She's really blown away by it. And she watches it over and over and over again for a while. And she's starting to be like, obviously, I 100% need to bring this technology back because it's the coolest thing ever, which is maybe not the best thing for her to be thinking. She finds a trinket here. I think the trinket is actually that she finds a pentagram. It is silver, so it's held up fairly well. It hasn't rusted. It was on a chain, and the chain is like gone. Like I think she can sort of see where it was, but it's just like an outline of like rust. But the charm is still intact, the pendant, and it's a pentagram. The person who had this room was some flavor of neo-pagan, probably with like a few hundred years of cultural difference and development from what that means to us. But she still had this sort of like pentagram charm, and she doesn't recognize the symbol. Like she'll look it up later and she'll understand its significance is probably religious. And she'll, read all about that. But right now she just knows that it's beautiful. And once again, it feels like a moment of human connection to these people. So she takes it. And she loves that. The crew quarters is one of her favorite places so far.
7 is on the right side of the ship. Starboard side. The right side is the less wrecked side of the ship. Labyrinthian, scientific, seed, and melancholy. So I think this is another cryo area here. I think that makes sense, right? And I think this is the bigger cryo area. There are scores of cryotubes here that are not showing error codes, not showing signs that they've been damaged. Maybe a couple of them, but I think for the most part, there's about 100 people here who are still in suspension. And I think that's the tube racks, it's easy to get lost in. It's kind of like I was at my storage unit today, and one of the doors was broken, and I had to go. I wandered around for a long time because on the inside, with no windows or anything to tell you like what part of a thing is a thing, they all look the same. They have numbers, but they don't mean anything, and you can wander around for a long time. And I think that's what these racks look like. It's not just like tube, right? Each one of these suspension systems is like a, not a room, but like a, it's an ordeal. It's a system. So they're spaced, I don't know, 10 feet apart or whatever, but they're big chunks of machinery with the people in them. And so they take up a bit of space, and they're not like it's not just like racks on a wall, right? It's these, yeah, it's like a storage space, right? It's easy to sort of get lost walking through these racks of suspended people. Definitely scientific, all those scientific things. And yeah, this was intended to be the seed of our civilization. Most of us got out, but these ones didn't, which means there are many, many, many other empty racks somewhere else. But, I mean, we're not done evaluating the ship, and waking them up prematurely might do more harm than good. So I think we're letting them sleep for now. I imagine we'll come up with some protocol to gradually awaken people. It will probably come as quite a shock to them. And so this is a delicate operation, but we can't let them sleep forever, right? And they are our people. But it is a little bit sad to let them, if I was in suspension and my goal was to wake up, knowing that after waiting for 10,000 years, I had to wait a little bit longer. And anything could happen, right? What connections am I making? I think connection to the other cryo unit that didn't make it, right? Yeah, these people just got lucky. They happened to be on the right side of the ship when the other side failed. And I don't know if people were, grouped by a family or a social group or whatever. So it's possible that someone on this side could have made it and someone close to them did not on the other side, which is a further complication when they wake up, right? How do I feel here? I mean, it's, again, a sense of awe. It's like almost vertigo, right? Kind of looking back. I imagine the people look more or less the same, but would we even be able to talk? What do my senses tell me about this? This place seems more sterile. We just came from a natural cavern. And although, this is a different kind of life that's been preserved for quite some time, it is different. This whole area is, by design in stasis. And yeah, so it smells, even though everyone here is alive, it smells dead. Not like dead bodies or whatever, but just sort of like inert, really neutral.
You know what? I think I'm going to say that room 6 was just half of the rest of the ship, and this is the other half, because we find the human equivalent of the catacombs. It's not catacombs. There aren't remains on display here. Obviously, I think a lot about death rituals in space. And understandably, there's a lot of sort of like corpse into the void type death rituals that we see, which I think is understandable. And has also been curious to me sometimes because, yes, space is big, but just creating space junk that I don't think... I'm not going to get distracted for too long, but I just need to search, would a body decompose in the vacuum of space? Because I don't think it would. Okay, depending on circumstances, sure. Your body might freeze, it might just dry out completely so that it wouldn't decompose normally, or it might decompose normally. But you're most likely to be frozen or mummified, I would assume. And so your body just wouldn't break down. Though, yeah, sure, that would be different if you're in a spacesuit, because that is mimicking an environment you can live in. And it would be the bacteria from your body would do some decomposition. Probably fall apart due to radiation. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's always seemed a little unlikely to me that, I shouldn't say unlikely, we currently have a habit of dealing with human remains in ways that aren't sustainable. That is pretty much the status quo for a lot of humanity. And so I guess it wouldn't be surprising that people would be like, yes, every single dead body, every person that dies in space, we're just going to toss out into space and they'll just be space junk forever unless something happens to their body, like they fall into the sun or get irradiated into pieces. I just think you would want to minimize creating space junk, right? And so I would assume that most spacefaring, serious dedicated spacefaring societies would have forms of most likely aquamation, I imagine there would be some great cremation for like, you know, in the fucking rockets and stuff, but like to cremate a body, it has to get really, really, really hot. And you probably wouldn't want to fuck around with putting remains in your rockets. And then like, how are you going to collect the bones, which won't burn? They have to be manually crushed. So aquamation makes the most sense. If you're serious about being in space, you're probably liquefying human remains. And you can quote me on that. So... And space is limited. Why would you keep remains? You know what I mean? Okay. So, I thought this was going to be so quick because I was like, we find the human equivalent of the robot graveyard. I don't know myself at all, I guess. Scratch what I said about the thing. I think up top I said something like, I know myself, so I know I probably rolled for this. I don't know myself. I thought that I was going to be able to just casually breeze past some death rituals with the talk of responsible body disposal. Amateur hour vis-a-vis knowing what the fuck I'm talking about and going to talk about. Many modern forms of aquamation create a perfectly safe and sterile liquid from the remains that can literally just be dumped. I mean, this is unceremonious, apologies. Could just be safely pretty much dumped in the sewer without harming anybody. And so there's no reason why that wouldn't be possible here. And so I think part of the reason that the vibe is melancholy is that it is immediately familiar. Our society still often deals with remains in this way. I think there is like, I can't tell if this is like gauche and horrific to anybody except me, and so I don't know. I was thinking about like a fountain. That is so beautiful to me, the idea that your body would be liquefied and added into like essentially a fountain, like a beautiful fountain system with like all of the other bodies to just like be displayed and circulate. I love that. That's probably scary to a lot of people, I'm guessing. And it is just a little gauche, like a big fountain. But maybe like a gentle water feature, like a pond and a little waterfall. Maybe that's a really common way that we still tend to dispose. Like those are our cemeteries, as it were. As you go to the pond and know that your loved one's remains are circulating in the water with the remains of everyone else who's died here. And I think there is a pond, but it's dry, right? It's empty. Would have just evaporated by now. But there are like those same shelves, but instead of like a whole robot head, there's just a bunch of little jars and vials. Very small. I think they probably just kept a little bit from everybody that they can just put on a shelf and then put the rest of them in this display feature. And it's definitely old-fashioned, but it's very much still what we do. And so it's immediately recognizable as a mausoleum. And I did roll destroyed. That's sad. I think what that means is that we don't actually see these little jars and vials. We see a bunch of broken glass. And we see that like some of the pipes the pipes that would be used to sort of like circulate the remains and feed the like waterfall and that kind of thing have snapped. And again, all of this there is no indication yet that anybody like freaked out and broke everything, except in the main room. I think in that first room, it still does feel like everything was like fucked up by hand. This just looks like a very, very old, unmaintained area where a bunch of stuff has broken and rusted. That covers destroyed, that covers melancholy, that covers the relic. What about knowing for the modifier? I think it could be as simple as just like, well, yeah, we saw that those chips that we use, the augments are being developed, but this could have been some robots and some people who were totally unrelated to us. Maybe they visited. But the fact that they have this very, very similar, sort of slightly more ancient looking version of our death rituals really seems to put into place that these are direct ancestors of us. And I think it also provides confirmation that what we saw, we knew that the robot catacomb was like a catacomb and a mausoleum, but because, right, it felt unsettling and weird to us, and the whole rant that I went on about humans and robots having different relationships to death and everything, it wasn't totally recognizable. But I think that seeing it, this immediate reflection, this mirror here in a way that we do understand, like, and viscerally feel, just gives us a like, oh yeah, that's what that was. Both of these rooms are these monuments to the dead, presumably the crew who died on the journey. We haven't found any like living quarters or anything yet, so it's hard to say exactly who this was. But actually, you know what, maybe I'll give myself that as like a breadcrumb to find some more stuff, sort of shifting through the like remains of like the shattered vials and jars and everything that had little individual remains. I think we're like, this is more people than could reasonably, like, if maybe they were all just sleeping in the main room, but this is more people than that. They were traveling with a big group, either in a different ship, or we haven't found, like, this ship is bigger, and we just haven't found out how to get to the bigger parts yet. But this is one of the things that we're learning here, is like, it wasn't just crew. There were also probably civilians and just people living their lives on this ship, or maybe being transported by it, because there are a lot of people here. And so now we know we have to sort of, let's hunt for the place that maybe they were sleeping. That's something we should be on the lookout for. Because if it was just crew, if it was small, then like the small size that we've seen so far could make sense, because it's just people who are working on it. But maybe people were also living here who weren't strictly working. It seems like that's true. Let's find more evidence of that. Maybe in room 8.
Let's let them sleep a little bit and go to the next area. 8.
Little over halfway through now.
2622. Wow. Okay.
The type is technical.
Destroyed.
Organic, once again.
The modifier is scientific.
Occupied.
Spiritual.
The item is a relic.
Weapon.
And the vibe is melancholy.
Mysterious.
And dangerous. Yikes.
I think that this is the rec room. So the rec room is sort of on the bow of the ship, on the port side. It like essentially shares a wall with the cockpit, and it's up against the outer hull. And there's a window here, and the window's smashed, right? Because it's weaker than the rest of the ship. So in the crash, it smashed. And that's why there's organics here, because the local flora has just poured in and is taking over the place. So there's sun and fresh air here, which she takes a second to enjoy. I think that there are animals here too. This weapon. There aren't dangerous animals here. There's like a little, like, what is it? There's a, I'm just going to say it. The arachnophobia warning. There's like a big spider. I'm not going to dwell on it. That is like the size of her head. But to her, it's as though she found a little, like a mouse. She's like, oh, beautiful. And she's not stupid. Like, she knows that a wild animal like this can be dangerous. But she thinks it's very beautiful, and she thinks it's kind of sweet. And she like cute talks to it while keeping her distance and keeping her eye on it. And so she's just wary of it as she goes through her exploration. But so I think the mystery of this place is that she doesn't get right away what it is, right? Like, there's a window here, like in the cockpit, and so she sort of wonders if they're connected somehow, but she doesn't know. And she's kind of like, I think the idea that it is just recreational, so you could see outside, occurs to her. And also she's kind of like, what would that be like, right? Like, what would you see if you looked out this window up there? Like, she doesn't have that sort of image of like, whatever, black space. So I don't think they do space flight. I don't think they do orbital space flight. So she doesn't know, right? She just kind of wonders. And she wonders if that even makes sense, right? Like if you would even do that, if that's what this room is. And then there's this weapon, and I think this is another one of this is like a real weapon, not an improvised weapon. And yeah, I don't even know what to say about that, right? Like, I think she notes it, and again, she's really worried, right? Like this place is so beautiful, and having these weapons around so often is really upsetting to her, because I don't think it's part of the story that they tell that there was fighting among the ancestors. So that is a detail that is really like upsetting to her. Yeah.
8 is kind of like one of the main sections, the central, like the torso of the ship, kind of near the mid-rear. Looks like a central hub area. So the back half of the ship I have, it is still a little bit symmetrical and still shapely, I guess. But it's almost like the ship is kind of has its spine broken, right? And so the back half of the ship is not on the same level as the rest of it. It's kind of down at like a 30-degree angle. And again, like we can see, the top where it's shattered open, there's debris coming in, rock formations over it. I mean, it's dangerous because it's not level, right? Definitely going to need some climbing equipment or some ropes or safety webbing or whatever to traverse this area at all. I really don't know about the weapon or spiritual here. Should I roll again, or should I try to make this work? I'd like to try and make it work. What's spiritual about this to me? The back of the ship is broken, right? And maybe this is part of the catastrophe or damage or the incident that kept everyone from getting out. Maybe there had to be an evacuation. Maybe, why would the back half of a ship be sunken down? And I think, a colony ship takes a long time to get to where it's going. And although there's a singular mission, people are going to be people, and factions are going to come up. And maybe, before landing or something, there was a conflict here in this kind of central section of the ship, and we can see damage on the walls, on the pillars, everywhere on there. There's signs of conflict, and I think there was an explosion probably before we landed that damaged this part of the ship. And maybe there are even some people left. I don't think we would leave people here. But maybe there were some discarded. I think there's signs of weapons. I don't think the actual weapons are here, but there's signs that there was a fight. And it's spiritual because I think maybe this makes sense because this conflict carried forward in myth. Maybe there was kind of like a creation myth kind of thing where, whoever came from the sky, and there was a battle between good people and different good people. And maybe this is another question for the anthropology, archaeology. How do our myths line up with the facts of what happened? And can we do some forensics on this area to sort of decode what our myths actually mean, right? And, that's a connection we're making between what we believe now and what might have happened before, and why everyone didn't make it out, why some of the things were broken because of this conflict. A lot of connections happening there. What is safe here? A valid answer is not much, I think. We rolled dangerous, right? It is not super safe here. It is still unstable, both kind of ground-wise and maybe whatever power conduits are still active, keeping things going, are not in great shape. Maybe I don't imagine they'd be sparking or anything, but again, we need to traverse this carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, and what is missing, broken, or damaged? The whole damn ship.
I think what we're gonna discover first is that the big main room, the big dome room, we came in from the ceiling, and all of the rooms we've been accessing have been at floor level, and there were the engines underneath. And I was thinking, like, do we want to go further down? Maybe eventually, but first I think we discovered that there's a ring of rooms on top of the main floor rooms. So there's a second story attached to this dome, also just encircling it. So we're going to go explore the higher ring. And first we find room 8. And I think we go up there first because the infrastructure is just whole. Like, there is a functioning ladder or something that goes up there that all of the other ones are too rotted or have fallen down or whatever happened to them. The combination of technical, scientific, and relic was exactly, I believe, what led to discovering the first prototype of our psychic augments. But the vibe there was uplifting, and the vibe here is melancholy. I think I'm going to switch 2 of my dice. Yeah, I'm switching the 3 and the 5 from type and item so that instead of technical, my type is cramped, and instead of a relic, my item is trinket, which is very similar, but a slightly different vibe. So this means that my room is now cramped, scientific, there's a trinket, and the vibe is melancholy. I'm going to put room 8 on top of room 2, which was also cramped. So I like the idea that it takes up the same footprint, and there's a bunch of stuff in here. I think that the trinket and the melancholy vibe are somehow connected. Trinket has such an implication of like a personal item, right? Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure out a bunch of stuff here and how it can relate. But we saw that the room underneath here, that robot was sitting on some crates, holding its hands out to us. And what we find up here is skeletal human remains in a very similar position. This, of course, is unusual because we obviously see that these people, they aquamated their dead. They wouldn't have just had a body laying around, which could mean that this person died alone. Like, after everybody had left, there was nobody to do it for them. It could mean that their aquamation process had somehow failed, like it stopped working, maybe when they crashed, ? Here. I think it's the former. I think what it really feels like is that both the robot and the human were sitting here, one on top of the other in these different floors, waiting for something. Maybe they were waiting for the same thing. Maybe the human was waiting and then died, and so the robot took over the waiting. I think it's probably that. I like that idea. I don't think there's any way for the characters to figure that out, but I think I like that being true. This human was sitting here waiting for something, and they died, and the robot took up the wait. And I think we don't know what they were waiting for, but they have... Oh. There's a communicator... that I think has very clearly to us been taken out of one of the engine rooms. Like, the engine room that we saw had an intact communicator, but this communicator has been taken out of one of the other engine rooms and installed, like, kind of jankily up here. And so they were waiting for a call of some kind. And I think the other thing that's here is one of those prototype chips, one of the psychic enhancement chips. I think it's on the back of their skull, like just fused there from where it was surgically implanted. I think it's huge compared to what we have now. Like, seeing it on the table, it was obvious that it was big, but I think especially seeing it on someone's skull, there's like a little bit of a wince around the room of like, fuck, oh my god, that's huge. That looks like it was so painful. Ours are so small. And that stuff I think is not the communicator and the chip aren't strictly the trinket. I think that's actually the scientific part of this. The trinket is... I'm so stymied by the timeline. What can exist after 10,000 years? I guess I said that we found like books with notes in them, so a book could exist. That's fine. Is it a book? It's... I think it's a piece of jewelry that is either managed to somehow stay on the skeleton or has fallen to the floor and was obviously being worn. It's like a necklace, a locket, and I think specifically it is like the obvious pair to a necklace that we have in a museum somewhere. Again, one of the fucking dorks on our team recognizes it, like, and is in like reverent, is in awe, and tears welling up in their eyes from the intensity of it, talking about this one exhibit with this necklace that is like, this is the earliest piece of clothing or accessory or expression of personal style that we've found from our ancestors. And it's not literally like, you know, a bestie's necklace that's half a heart, but it's the kind of thing where it did feel very obvious that it was a pair. Something was meant to fit into it that has never been found. And we just found it. And I think this is melancholy for the obvious reasons of clearly this person was close enough with somebody to have matching jewelry with them. And it seems like probably never reunited with them after whatever happened that made them separate. But I think it also has a little bit of a personal stake for that person who recognizes it. I think that, you know, they had really narrativized what that could mean and had hope that they would find that the other half of the necklace would be found one day in a way that made it a happy ending somehow. Like, it would be found downstream in a way that meant we could tell ourselves, like, these two people didn't separate. One of them just lost their necklace. Maybe it came off while they were saving the life of the other one. You know, they weren't separate. They were together. And the necklaces were just separate. Maybe that's just a common fable kind of thing. It's the type of thing that it's a story that gets told over and over again in our media, in our fiction. The many ways that the necklaces could be separated, but the people were not. Maybe there's even sayings, you know, the kind of thing that like reminds you to treasure the people around you, and that like even when things seem like they're lost, that doesn't mean you've lost the truth of the connection that they brought, that kind of thing. Like, this is just a very heavily mythologized and narrativized piece of jewelry. And this is not that story. The people were separated, and they died apart from each other. I think very far apart. I think the other necklace was found quite a ways from here. And the weight of that mythologizing means that this is considerably more emotionally poignant than it would otherwise be. Even if it is also just, you know, sad to see that someone died here. We just saw a bunch of people died here, and that didn't hit in quite the same way. They were both melancholy, but this one really, really hits. And I think that's it. I think definitely answering a bunch of the questions from the list. What do you feel here? How does this relate to the past, present, or future? What connections are you making? What piece of history have you discovered? How does this relate to a previous room or discovery? The one exciting thing here is that we're now like, this seems to imply that maybe, you know, they brought this communicator up here, so they clearly thought that somebody would be able to contact them on it. And maybe they just thought that meant that somebody could come to the ship and then radio up to them. But maybe it means that they also created a mobile version of this communicator, and that's now something we can look for, which is exciting. That could mean tying things together. But yeah, this is sad. This hits really hard. I think we take a little bit of a break, actually, before we share that discovery with the teams that are working elsewhere. They're still, you know, putting up lights, ensuring that structures are sound, running tests. And I think we kind of break for the night. And I'm going to start with room 9 in the morning after everybody has sort of like had time to digest this big fracturing of a fairy tale touch point. This has been Folio, an actual play podcast about solo and epistolary TTRPGs. You can find transcripts, game statistics, and more at foliopod.site. You can help pay for hosting costs, game purchases, and maybe eventually a bit of my production labor at patreon.com/foliopod or ko-fi.com/foliopod. You can find Dora on Bluesky at Queen Regnant. She has games at dcity.itch.io and games she makes with her wife at galpalgames.itch.io. Make sure you go follow Hocus Pocus Hyperfocus on Kickstarter so you don't miss when it launches on October 6th. And support the Kickstarter Union, by the way. They are not asking for a boycott or for anyone to stop using the service. They are asking you to help put pressure on management to recognize that everything only exists because of the labor of those who make it. Shout out to unions. Get it. You can find Marc at majcher.com and majcher.itch.io. You can find Satah, that's me, on Bluesky at satahchips.gaygothvibes.online and my work generally at gaygothvibes.online. Next week, Dora and Marc and I will continue our games of Farsickness Landing by Lonely Cryptid Media. Everything I mentioned here is linked in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and take care out there.